So this is analysis of a piece by the Seattle, Washington-based guitar player, composer Joshua Mcewan. The title of the piece is Chestnut Ridge Road, which is on his YouTube channel, I believe called Boulders. It's for his Ringing Rocks project. And it's a really beautiful piece. I just listened to it about 3 times. Of course, one time I was pausing continuously throughout to make notes for this analysis. It's about an 8-minute piece. For me, I would think of it as being split up into 6 different sections. There's 2 instruments being played that are overdubbed. One of the instruments is classical guitar and the other is just human voice. Though there's no lyrics, the voice is used to layer chords and create sound. So running through the different sections, the A section lasts about 1 minute 16 seconds and consists of 4 tones. We have an E flat, another E flat, an octave above it, an F, and then a B flat. And sort of an irregular but repeating rhythmic pattern is established that repeats for roughly the first 4 minutes of the song. In the B section, starting around the 117 mark, the E flat disappears and we have 2 new bass notes emerge, a B flat and a G flat below it, while the 3 top notes, E flat, F, and B flat, remain the same. Now, at about the 2-minute mark after that, we have a very gradual vocal swell begin, and it's almost inaudible at first, and to my ear, I can basically just hear one note on that swell, which is B natural, and soon after that, the bass on the guitar returns back to the original bass note of E flat, and while that's happening, this vocal swell just continues to rise and rise until about the 3-minute and 50-second mark, in which everything sort of drops off a cliff and we just resolve that into the D section of the piece, where we just have this, it resolves into a beautiful sort of church choir style chord, a really, really gorgeous sounding 5-note chord consisting of the notes, as best as I can tell, B, G flat, B flat, F, and E flat. Now, at this point, that chord starts sort of fading and fragmenting into its different components. For instance, we first hear it gradually fade into the lower perfect fifth, the B and the G flat. Then a little bit later, it fades into the G flat and the E flat, and sort of it sort of like repeats that process in a way. I don't know what was in the composer's head as this was happening, but to me it sounds roughly like a repeat. And so as that's happening, eventually we get to the 6-minute 55-second mark, at which point, now you might call this a continuation of section D, because it does include the same exact notes, but to me this really has to have its own section because a rhythmic pattern is reintroduced. So basically everything that was happening before that abruptly stops, and we hear 2 notes from that chord jump out and again establish a very, very specific rhythm. The 2 notes are G flat and then a B flat, an octave above that. And what happens at that point is that the different notes of the chords of that chord gradually start emerging. They emerge, but first we hear a low B flat in the bass, or B natural in the bass. Then we hear an E flat, then a B flat, and then an F. At that point, we have a fade. The vocal choir style part fades out, and then we have a fading back in of the guitar section, which sounds almost exactly, but I don't think exactly like the A and the B section, but something very similar to the A and B section are repeated. And at this point, every thematic element of the piece is more or less repeated in a much more rapid way than it had been leading up to that point. But it's all repeated very quickly in this E section, which leads us to the F section, the concluding section, which basically just merges the B section and the D section. So the one repeating guitar rhythm part, along with that really, really beautiful, lush church choir style chord. Those merge together, and then we have kind of an abrupt ending that leaves us with a little bit of a reverb remnant that just kind of fades out. So let's examine a little bit about the characteristics of this piece. Now, the rhythm. Now, again, I listened to the track 3 times. I haven't done an exact transcription. I did not even try to count or transcribe any of this. So I'll just, use very, very general language that at first the rhythm sounds disorienting, possibly even a little bit random. But very quickly, after about 20 or 30 seconds, our ear really adjusts and recognizes that a repeating pattern is happening. So that repeating pattern emerges, and it continues all the way to about the 4-minute mark, up until that the vocal swell resolves. And then that rhythmic pattern really re-emerges towards the end of the song. During the choir chord section, I think I forgot to mention this before, but as that choir chord is happening and it's fading into different components, we have fragments of that guitar part that are reappearing, but they never really stay long enough in order for a rhythmic pattern to really take hold. So in that whole section of that choir chord happening, we really have sort of a floating sensation where there's no real solid rhythm or no real conventional rhythm happening. So onto the next topic, which would be tonality. Now, there's only 5 notes in this entire piece, which is really interesting. The notes, though the tonal center shifts somewhat from the E flat to a B natural, if we look at it as the E flat being the tonal center, we have E flat, F, G flat, B flat, and then B natural. So you might say that fits into an E flat Aeolian tonality, though to my ear that doesn't really seem right to put that sort of Western modal label on it like that, because it omits the fact that it omits the 4th and the 7th degree of the scale really puts it into a different category harmonically. So to me, it doesn't really sound Aeolian, and in fact, those 5 notes put in that order are a Japanese pentatonic scale that is commonly used in traditional Japanese music. I guess through the 1800s, I couldn't really say, but it's a Japanese pentatonic scale if you choose to look at it that way. Now, the sound of it definitely doesn't sound like Japanese music, at least not to my ear. To me, it more reminded me possibly of something by Steve Reich, where you have these chords, which, this is a good point to transition, I guess, to talking about the chords. You have these chords that are put together, and the duration of them lasts a long time. So let's just take this first chord, for instance, in the A section of the piece, which consists of E flat, F, and B flat. So essentially that's an E flat sus2 chord. Now, in conventional harmony, that chord is really, the way it functions is it's pulling our ear someplace. We really want to hear that E flat sus2 resolve to an E major, or resolve to an E major 7, or E flat major 7, or possibly a B flat. But it doesn't do that. It just continues on for a full minute and 17 seconds. Now, in like a pop song or a jazz song or a rock song or something like that, we're used to hearing chords switch very, very rapidly. And what that does when we hear a chord repeating for that long is it really abolishes any sort of harmonic function that chord might have. So whereas at first our ear really wants to hear something else happen after that chord's being played for a little while, really after about 20 or 30 seconds, that kind of ceases to happen. Our ear stops telling us that this is supposed to go someplace, this is supposed to land someplace. And when that happens, our ear starts to give us different types of information, different types of patterns start to emerge, like that really unconventional rhythm pattern that's being played. So So yeah, so that I was mentioning about Steve Reich. You know, his music really concerns itself with this type of thing all the time. He actually composes pieces, you know, 10, 20-minute long pieces solely based on one chord, where none of the tones really move away from, you know, playing 3 or 4 or 5 notes. Now this one does go through a cycle of chords, so let's discuss that. Now, as I mentioned in the A section, we have that E flat sus2. In the B section, where the bass notes change, it basically suggests a G flat major 6/9 chord. Also one of those chords that kind of pulling at our ear to go someplace, but again, it doesn't. It just stays there for about 45 seconds or so. Then at that point, the vocal swell begins, and it introduces one new note, which is a B natural. Now, I don't really know what to call that chord. You could call it a B major 7 sharp 11 over F, but it doesn't really, to me, that doesn't really fit, especially being that a B major 7 sharp 11 is where the next section is going to, and it really sounds like a different chord. It sounds like it's moving. So I'm just not even going to give that chord a name. But you know, that's the note that's introduced there, is a B natural. Now, in the D section, this choir chord that I mentioned before, it is truly a B major 7 sharp 11 with a B in the bass. Really, really beautiful chord. And in the E section, that chord is continued, as we mentioned before. It's just sort of fragmented, taken apart, put back together, deconstructed and reconstructed a few different times. And then in the F section, which really is just superimposing the B and D sections of the piece, that chord is repeated. It's all the same tones, just using the different parts of the song to put it together. So that pretty much takes us through the whole thing. We talked a little bit about rhythm, a little bit about tonality, about the form. I just want to make a couple comments on the composer, Josh Mcewan. Being that he is one of my oldest and dearest friends. We met when we were teenagers, and we were in a band together for many years. And I'm saying this not to as a knock in any way, really more in terms of a compliment to Josh, is that he has virtually no musical training whatsoever. You know, he most of the time knows what chords are called when he plays them, but beyond that, he really has no experience at all studying theory, composition. I don't think he reads music unless he's picked that up since, you know, in the years since we've been close to each other playing music together. However, I'm always amazed listening to his pieces that he has such a good grasp of harmony, of, you know, where to move a piece of music. You know, there's a video on YouTube that I watched that was asking about, you know, the Beatles and how much music theory they knew. Well, they really didn't know any theory. They didn't even read music, but their intuition and their ear was so good that they didn't need to be told. You know, their ear was telling them the information that they needed. And I've always, you know, listening to Josh's music, felt that way about what he was doing. You know, he doesn't need, you know, his ear is giving him all the information that he needs in order to make this piece. So this piece was pure, as all of his pieces, pure imagination and pure intuition creating it. But I also want to mention that he used a very sort of sophisticated composition technique in order to put this together. He actually created it on graph paper, and he used a note array. He told me that there were 7 notes in it. I'm not sure what 7 notes he was thinking, because I only counted 5 used in the piece. But in any case, he used an array of notes, five notes, and he used graph paper to map out what this piece would look like before he actually sat down and started recording it. You know, I don't think he was aware that this was a technique that people had used before. You might say it's somewhat related to, you know, what Morton Feldman was doing, you know, back in early mid 20th century, but really it's not. It's completely Josh's own invention, this process and this procedure that he invented to record this piece. And hopefully, you know, there is going to be more pieces like this coming up, because it's really, really beautiful. I really, really enjoyed it, and I hope that you follow his channel, and I hope you enjoy it too. So Josh, please keep the music coming. It's really beautiful, and we need more of it. All right, peace everybody.